The day you plant the seed is not the day that you eat the fruit. I came across this post that I wrote 5 or 6 years ago, and I was reflecting about how important the little baby steps and the little actions that we consistently take day in, day out, that we can really easily ignore and push away and forget that they actually make a difference. Just how vital they are to our progress this week, because I live in Mallorca now. I've been living here in Spain best part of however many years. But before, I used to live in Girona, and in Girona, they speak Catalan. So, I can speak Catalan, and I mean, it's a bit rusty now because I've been away from Girona for a while. But, I learned Catalan because when I was living in Girona, that's the only language people would speak. And I always found it really funny because then when you're living in Spain and you don't know Spanish, people think, oh, you should be fluent by Spanish by now. And it's always been one of those things in the back of my mind that one day, I should learn and I will learn. But it's difficult to learn a language when you don't hear it actively day in, day out. And now that I'm here in Mallorca, I do hear Catalan as well, or Mallorquí, but I hear more Spanish, and I have Spanish-speaking friends who I can practice with. It's taken me a bit of time to get around to this position where I actually wanted to learn a language, and I think that's a key part of any goal, is that we have to want it. We have to want it enough, or there has to be some sort of pain point. And for me, I think that pain point started becoming a lot clearer around November, December last year, when I'd be at events with some of my friends and people are speaking in Spanish. I'd be able to understand the majority of what they're saying, but I couldn't say anything, just nothing. As someone, I like talking, I like having interesting conversations, and not being able to participate in those conversations is really, really challenging. At least it is to me. So at the end of last year, probably November, December, I got in the headspace where I actually decided I wanted to learn Spanish. And I've now spent, I think, probably had 100, maybe 100 days where every single day I've spent at least 15 minutes learning something in Spanish. And it might be a new word, it might be a new verb, and practicing and listening, watching videos, watching podcasts, or listening to podcasts in Spanish that are progressively getting more and more complicated, understanding more, and then recognizing what those words mean in Spanish versus what they mean in Catalan or English, because that's what was happening. My brain would be thinking English, Catalan, Spanish, translating from English to Catalan, from Catalan into Spanish. However, what's really interesting is that now that I've spent, 3 months of consecutive increasing intensity and time and duration of learning this language, I am understanding more. I'm able to speak more. And what has really, kickstarted that speaking in the last month is having invested and brought on a tutor into my life that I see at least once a week. So I've been seeing this one particular tutor once a week for, I think, about 5 or 6 weeks now, with the sole purpose of increasing and improving my ability to speak in Spanish. And I now actually have two. So I'm paying two different people to help me with my conversation and with my accent and with my understanding. I was almost going to say a Spanish word then. My comprehension obviously in Spanish, but in speaking, because that was the thing I was really struggling with the most, was the speaking. I know what people are saying, but every time I think, it's getting stuck in my brain. So I can read it, and if I have time to think, I could say something, but in the moment, I wasn't thinking anything and I wasn't sure what to say. I had an hour-long tutoring session with my new tutor, my additional tutor, yesterday, and I came out of that conversation, that hour, on such a high. I was so excited and just felt so proud of myself because I had spent the entire hour pretty much entirely in Spanish, 99% in Spanish. There was probably 10 words in total in that entire hour that were spoken in English to clarify things, because there was a couple of words that I hadn't heard before and I was maybe guessing them, or I was experimenting with the tenses, the past, the present, or the future. And it was such a positive, powerful moment for me personally when it comes to my language learning, to see how impactful those little tiny baby steps of 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, half an hour a day, an hour a day, whatever it was, collectively, day in, day out, week in, week out, how they've all been slowly adding in my comprehension, my knowledge, my understanding, but bring that knowledge from not just into my head and into my mouth and my abilities to speak. And I'm by no means anywhere near fluency yet. That is my goal by the end of the year, is that I want to be in that position that I can have these hour-long, multi-hour-long conversations purely in Spanish on all sorts of different topics, and I don't feel like I'm restricted so much like I have been in the past. But I think there's a lot of correlations with nutrition to my experience when it comes to my language learning. Whether our goal is to lose weight or to get stronger or to improve our performance, I think we so easily just want the result now, overnight results. And it's just not the way that life works, unfortunately. I mean, it'd be great if we can put the order in and then tomorrow, ta-da, new person. But with weight loss, like in order to change, to gain more muscle and to lose body fat, these little tiny adjustments, maybe 10 grams, 50 grams, 100 grams, micro little adjustments that are happening on a day-by-day basis that collectively reach our long-term goal. It's not something that happens by just doing one change. We've got to be able to make those changes into our everyday life and embed them into our routine. And so, like I was saying with the Spanish, for me, that's become part of my routine, is that every single day I'm spending at least 10 minutes or 20 minutes, or now I'm spending an hour most days, at some point of time, focusing on whether it's grammar or it's listening to podcasts or watching sort of videos. But I've embedded that into my lifestyle in a way that I can stick with versus creating these unrealistic changes. But that started because I started with the 10 minutes, the 20 minutes, the 15 minutes a day. I think I did 15 minutes a day for a month, and then I increased it to 30 minutes a day for a month, and then now it's pretty much an hour a day. And I think last month I probably listened to or watched or spent at least 50 hours last month where I was actively engaged in learning, listening, having conversations in Spanish. And that tracking and that recording was part of that process in order to be able to see progress. Obviously, when you're having a conversation with someone or you're viewing someone, if we're looking at somebody else, they're going on a weight loss journey, we can see that in the other person, but we don't see it in ourselves because we're looking at ourselves every single day, and we don't see those little micro adjustments with our beliefs, with our body shape, with our body weight. We can see it in someone else, usually because there's a time gap between each exposure to that person. And in that moment, it's so valuable to have ways that we can track our progress. And it could literally be hours, or it could be with its weight, it could be like your skin fold measurements, it could be how your clothes fit, it could be your belt buckle, whatever it is. Finding particular goals and particular ways to measure your progress is going to be really valuable for you in order to stick with the process and be motivated, because I'm sure there's going to be times like this week I'm feeling really, really motivated again because I'm actively seeing progress because I'm investing so much time, energy, money into my language learning. Whereas I also know there's going to be a time in the future where it's going to feel really hard and I'm going to feel frustrated that I'm not moving and progressing fast enough. But sticking with it and keep going and keep pushing and keep trying and keep learning and keep consistently adding repetition, that is what's going to get me to my long-term goal through all those moments. So my challenge to you this week is to identify one thing that you could change, one thing that you could add, one thing you could remove or you could evolve. What is this one thing that you can do that is realistic, that you could see yourself doing for the long distance future, that is going to align with your long-term goals for your life, for your future? For me, it's that spending an hour every day. And it doesn't have to be, it's not going to be an hour in one big block all the time. Sometimes it might be 15 minutes here, 15 minutes here, half an hour there. Other times I might end up doing an hour and a half. But for me, I've committed to doing that because I see the progress and I see the impact and the benefit that it has for me in my future and my life now. That's all for today. Like, subscribe, feel you're right, and I will see you next time.